work session. Today is June 12th. This is the first recorded part of our session, but we've been doing a candidate orientation downstairs with interested people who want to hear about what it's like to be a board member, or what it's like to what is necessary. And so if you do have any questions about that, you can certainly reach out to Miss Amy Lemon. And if you missed that and you're interested in running for the Board of Education, we do have an election for 3 seats in November. And so you can reach out to Miss Amy Lemon and she can get you that packet. But we'll now continue with our work session, and we have already called the roll and convened the meeting. So we're just coming in from a short recess. But first off, we have our calendar review and community engagement, and we don't have a ton on our calendar at the moment. But does anyone looking at that calendar see anything that's missing? All right, seeing none, we'll move right along to the next piece of business. I will just say that the next few things we have are on the 21st, the PLC Foundation Summer Solstice Breakfast, and then GAP graduation, and then the 10th Annual Greeley Naturalization Ceremony on the 30th. So just make sure that those things show up in your calendar if you're planning to attend. Next on our agenda is the proposed budget. And Dr. Pilch, I will give this to you and to Ms. Sponsor, I'm sure, to guide us through the budget.
Thank you, President Matthews. Ms. Sponsor is making her way to the table. We did have the opportunity to meet with you in advance. The other board members had not had a chance to schedule with us yet, but we are still offering that and very willing to meet to talk more specifically about the budget. If you desire to do that, I think Ms. Sponsor will just take you through some of the big chunks here tonight that we want you thinking about as we go into our meeting tonight, where the budget is on your agenda for consideration.
All right, thank you very much. As you all know, this is the budget meeting, so I thought I would kind of go over some of the highlights in the budget that you have hopefully had a chance to read. It has been posted on our website for a couple weeks. I can't remember exactly when we posted it, but that information has been out there and is available. So I just wanted to start by recapping a couple of the key pieces of legislation that impact the budget. Of course, the Public School Finance Act and then the special education funding are two really big components that have had positive impacts in our budget for this year. The School Finance Act, it is required in our state constitution that funding for each student increases by the rate of inflation. This year, that inflation rate was certified at 8%. That's the highest rate that I think it's ever been certified. Certainly the highest I have ever seen impacting the School Finance Act. That equates to almost $600 per student in an increased per pupil funding rate. In addition, the state also brought down that budget stabilization factor by an additional $180 million. So they are slowly but steadily making some headway with that. It is now down to $141 million, which is the lowest it has ever been since it was first created. And the goal is to have that gone next year. So hopefully that will come to fruition. Combined, those two things have an impact of about 10.6% increase on per pupil funding. Now, special education funding is also something that the state legislature has been really focusing on and trying to make some headway. They know that the amount of funding that they are providing for special education does not even come close to the actual costs to provide those services. So last year we saw a significant investment in special education funding that allowed what they call the Tier A funding to be increased to $1,750 per student. And that will remain in place. So that was, is always a concern. What if they invest money like that in 1 year and then can't continue that? So that will continue. And then at the same time, they will increase the funding for what they call Tier B students. Those are students with really significant needs that probably need one-on-one paraprofessional with them, special services, all kinds of additional services that cost a lot to provide those services. So the target has always been that those students would be funded at $6,000 per student. It has never even come close to that $6,000, but this year I think they're going to get close. I don't think they're going to get all the way to $6,000, but I think they are going to get very close to that. So definitely a positive. Next, I want to talk about the revenue sources from all of the different funds. So just a reminder that we use fund accounting in school districts. Each fund is designated by the state or by governmental accounting standards. So we really don't have a lot of leeway in how we report things. That's all pretty set for us. But the various funds that we have, the funding sources really come from, in aggregate, 3 different places. So local property taxes, that comes in through the School Finance Act, it comes in through the mill levy override, and that comes in through our bond debt that we have taken out. That equates to about 40% of the revenue coming in. Now, interestingly, on the flip side, the state revenue is also about 40% of the revenue that comes in. And that comes in mostly through the School Finance Act. They do have some state grants that come in, that some are competitive, some are just formula driven, but all of those together are 40%. Then our federal grant revenue is about 12%. So those are the main components of the revenue sources that come in. Then we have, the kind of random things like rental income. We have oil and gas royalties that come in, things like that. And then the appropriations. So this is where the money goes. Again, this is by fund. So the point that I wanted to make here is that our general fund is the largest fund. That is the fund that we have the most discretion over. So as we are making budget decisions, those are the funds that we're typically talking about because that's what we actually have say over and how we use that money. Our capital projects funds, that includes the bond projects that are currently ongoing. That number is shrinking. So last year that number was over 200 million. As we complete those projects and spend that money down, that money does eventually, unfortunately, go away. And then our special revenue funds, about 64 million, those are our grant funds. And that number is high, mostly because of all of the ESSER money that comes into the district. So that is higher than typical, but consistent with the past couple years. So I'm going to switch from all funds to now just the general fund. And here we are projecting a slight decrease in our pupil count. And the reason for that is because of preschool. So you probably remember that we voted to implement universal preschool. That, in effect, created a whole separate state agency to manage preschool. And so preschool funding no longer comes through the School Finance Act. It is a separate funding source. So by doing that, we're taking out those preschool students that we've counted in the past. That is why we see a decrease. If we left that the same, we'd have an increase.
Megan, is that actually 72 bodies, or is that actually 144 bodies because it's their halftime-ish?
It could be either. Okay. Yeah. So it's funded pupils. So yeah, it's FTE.
Yeah. So it's probably more students than that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Now here's a picture of our Public School Act funding over time. And you can see that we had a significant increase this year from $9,600 to just over $10,600. Again, that is largely due to inflation. And then that translates to our general fund revenue, which we're projecting to be about $307 million. And here, this shows that the School Finance Act plays a huge role in our general fund revenue. And between the various funding components of the School Finance Act, that makes up about 83% of our general fund revenue that comes in. Our mill levy override makes up about 11%. So you can see how important that mill levy is, but it's also, it kind of pales in comparison to School Finance Act. And then our expenditures. So once you take out transfers to our charter schools, because we just basically pass the money on per student from us to them, once you take that out, then we spend 79% of our budget on salaries and benefits. So we know that education is people intensive. We have a lot of little children that we are educating, and that takes a lot of adult people to provide those services.
Megan, can you just pause for just a second
Sure.
and go back to that last slide?
Yep.
Remind us what purchase services are again.
Sure. So purchase services are typically contractors. So if we contract for services, that could be construction, it could be minor repairs. It also includes some of our utility costs. So that's a big chunk of that right there.
Thank you.
Mhm. And then this is kind of a different way to look at our expenditures. Again, this is all set by the Colorado Department of Education and how we report our expenditures. And so these different categories are supposed to be consistent from district to district. So you could, in theory, compare how much we're spending compared to Poudre School District or other school districts across the state. I can tell you that that's not as easy as it sounds because we all have different interpretations and how we do record certain things. But here, instruction, as it should be, makes up most of the budget, so that is 53%. And then we have our instructional staff support. Those would be things like professional development for staff. That's 5%. Other support services, that would be Tony's team, with IT and some different things like that, are about 7%. Operations and maintenance, 14%. Again, a big chunk of that is utility cost. And school administration, so that would be principals, assistant principals, office staff, 7%. And student support would be people like your physical therapist, speech language therapist, occupational therapists, all of those kinds of support people that work with students. Transportation is 4%, business services 2%, and then general administration 1%. General administration would be people in this building. And again, just another way to kind of slice and dice the data, but I like this chart because it shows that the money goes into schools. And so when you look at high schools, elementary schools, K-8s, and middle schools, that is the majority of that donut there. Then you look at things like special education, our school leadership and academic achievement. They have larger slices of that pie, but those services really do go into the schools. It's just that they are kind of accounted for here at the district level because it's too hard to kind of identify that this person's going to this school for half a day and this person's going over here for, 3 hours, and we have to have some way to account for that that's a little more cost effective. And then here we have our general fund reserves. And I will say that we do have a healthy fund balance, which is something that we have worked hard to achieve. It's something that we have to be thoughtful in how we handle long term. So it's not something that you can necessarily invest in, say, salaries, because it's one-time money. Once that money is spent, it doesn't automatically replenish. So these funds are typically, an example for a good use of these funds would be a land purchase. And that's something that we are currently working on with a purchase that you all approved a couple months ago. I can't remember exactly when. But that is intended to come out of our fund balance. And that's a perfect use of fund balance because it's one-time money for an investment. And I think that is also, I'm happy to answer any questions you have.
Can you just remind me with that fund balance, and this really isn't that pertinent right now, but is that where we also had some money for the Meeker when we had the?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Just trying to remember.
Exactly. It's a good rainy day fund. So
Yeah.
when you do have those unexpected expenses,
Roof
you can pull 'em.
damages.
Yep.
Mhm.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep. Good example.
I'll just say thank you. I appreciate all the different ways to slice and dice it, as you say. Like, just yeah, whichever way it looks, it's easier to see, and so I appreciate that.
Thank you.
It is just so, well, number one, it's just really great to see the increase in people funding. And then also just how fortunate we are to have you as our CEO of finance. I mean, I think that it's not something we should take lightly, and just the fact that where we are is, I'm just grateful for you. And we
Thank
should
you.
all be grateful for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions from Ms. Sponsler?
I'll just share that tonight in your board meeting, you'll also see a bond update. You know, it's been really wonderful to be able to have the brains of Ms. Sponsler and the brains of Mr. Henson come together and be able to solve some of these really complex problems around the bond. And you know, as costs have gone up and supply chain issues have continued to drive cost up, we're also fulfilling the promises that we made with that bond issue because of what we have available. With our fund balance, we feel confident to be able to do that and to do what we promised our voters we would do, even facing increase in costs.
I don't know if there are any other questions for you, Ms. Sponsler, so I'll let you go.
Thank you.
But just, again, echo what Ms. Pappas said. Thank you. You're extremely good at what you do. I know we say that every time you present to us, but we certainly appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that's about all that we have on our work session, but we're down to the debrief of our work session, and start with you, Mr. Norwood.
Well, I don't know what to say, but it's interesting to be reminded of all the things that are involved in a campaign. So I hope everybody got good notes from that. And again, Ms. Sponsler, what she does is simply amazing. So.
Ms. Mesh.
I wondered if you all would let me read this thank you note that I received from Mr. Fred Heyman. He was the Holocaust survivor who came and spoke to about 1,000 of our 8th graders. And I sent him a thank you note and a picture of Brenda and Kyle, and I were able to snap a quick picture of him and also a picture of him surrounded by our students up on the stage. So he wrote, Dear Ms. Natalie Mash, my visit to Greeley was a wonderful experience, and I still feel overwhelmed when nearly 1,000 students rose to their feet, giving me a standing ovation. Thank you, and the Board of Education for inviting me. Also, thank you for sending the 2 pictures. And he just went on a little bit more, but George, he was wondering if anyone captured his presentation on video. I don't know if you were there or no. Okay, so I'll let him know that, but he also sent a few of his cards if any of you would like them who weren't there. He talked about being an upstander and not a bystander, speaking out for injustice and wrongdoing that you see. And then it has a little bit of his story. So that was just such a special experience. And our middle school students really were respectful, they were attentive, they asked great questions, and they were, it wasn't lost on them that this was one of the last people of that generation, and that they had that opportunity to hear directly from him. So I appreciate all the information on the campaign. I think we all want to do it well. We want to do it correctly, legally, and to the best of our ability. So I appreciate having all of that information as well. And thank you again, Ms. Sponsler, for making finance something that is understandable to all of us. My roommate in college was an accounting major. I think she pulled more all-nighters than anyone else in. So it is not easy to always make it understandable, but also, Megan, I just appreciate that you understand where every dollar goes, that it represents people and programs and students. And so I feel so confident whenever we do have to make those big decisions that you truly understand the impact. So I thank you.
Mr. Bentley?
Yeah, just to kind of echoing everybody else's things. Megan and the whole finance team were always amazing. It's exciting to see that funding going up. I wish it was for better circumstances rather than just inflation, but it is what it is, and it's the world we live in. So campaign season's kicking off, and that's always fun. I wish I would have attended this. I don't know if you guys had it, but I did not attend it when I ran, but it definitely would have clarified a couple things for me. So glad that we're doing this, and just excited for the summer and just to kind of wind down a little bit.
I will respond to that, Mr. Bentley. So we have only done an orientation prior to an appointment. So we did it when the year you all appointed Ms. Mash. There was an orientation that year. There was one year that when Dr. Campos-Spitzy was appointed. But the Chamber of Commerce has typically partnered at UNC to offer an orientation like this, and in the past, the board president and the board secretary would attend that orientation and provide the information there. The chamber has decided to not do that this year for the candidate races, and so we thought we would take it on and do one of our own for candidates. And I think the chamber's planning to do something else around meet the candidates thing, but moving away from the actual candidate orientation work.
Dr. Campos-Spitzy?
So just wanted to take time to say thank you to Megan. Something she said during negotiations in March was that she knew she wanted to be an accountant since she was a little girl. And when she got to marry that dream with education, it became her dream job. And so I too am so grateful we have you in the district, and that you have us in such a positive financial position. And yeah, that we're doing well that way. And I'm super, super, super excited that the budget stabilization factor hopefully will be going away in the next 1 to 2 years. That's going to mean so much for our students in schools. So yeah.
Ms. Bass?
I would just add that I was, I guess, ambivalent about hosting the candidate information tonight, which I think I mentioned at the last work session, but I am really glad that we were able to do this tonight, and I'm really grateful that people attended. So I'm glad that we were able to provide that knowledge and information. I would just really reiterate the fact that for people that are running for the school board, it is important that we do pay attention to the policies that Michael went over tonight. I think that sometimes we just get caught up in the day-to-day school visits, other things, events, and forget that we are a policy governing board, and it is important for us to pay attention to those. And also, just thinking about seriously what it means to be a board member. It is a huge commitment, and I mean, it's an honor to serve on the board, but it also requires some significant paying attention to who you are and what you're doing. So I appreciate that we were able to do this tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. I forgot to let you guys go, student reps. So anything on the work session that you?
Not much to say, but I think learning about the budget today was really interesting. I kind of want to major in economics in college, so like kind of learning about it is super cool.
I thought you were doing public policy.
Well, I'm doing urban studies
Or
and
urban studies,
economics.
yeah.
Both.
And economics. Okay, all right.
For now.
Right, we'll see.
Again, nothing much to say. I just thought it was really interesting to hear about how the funds for the district are allocated because I did not previously know much about that. So,
Dr. Pilch, anything you need to add?
No, just really grateful for staff, and I think all of you are aware that Ms. Sponsor was doing this while her husband was recovering from a significant illness, and that was a big deal. And I know it put a lot of additional stress on her, and of course she came through, and she and her team were able to put this together for us. The other thing I'll just share is that, you know, they're really big numbers. I mean, we're talking in the hundred millions, and really she has a budget that is built down to the penny of where the dollars are going to go and where we plan to spend them. And as you know, we'll bring you a revised budget mid-year because there will be things that change in the budget. You know, that fund balance, if we are able to acquire some of the land we're looking at right now for possible purchase in the future, then and you all approve the purchase of that land, then that fund balance number will change, of course, at that point, because we'll be spending those dollars down a little bit.
Thank you. And I don't have anything to add. Great meeting, guys. Thank you again, Ms. Sponsor. And this work session's adjourned. We'll see everyone back at 6 o'clock for the business meeting.